Hello, sir. Nathaniel Dove from Global News. Prime Minister, we're looking for more information on the deal to open the Gordie Howe Bridge. Canada spent $6.4 billion to build it. Is the Canadian debt repayment on the bridge included as expenses before profits are split with the U.S.?
Well, let me say, first of all, that we're very pleased that the prospect of the bridge reopening later this month, or opening later this month. This is good for Canada, good for the United States, both in the short term and the long term. What we have with the agreement with the U.S. Is as follows. And let me start with what it isn't. It's not splitting the tolls of the bridge. It is an agreement for 15 years to split net revenues. Splitting of tolls, any sharing of the toll revenue won't happen until all of the debt is repaid. We will split net revenues over the course of the first 15 years, and those net revenues are after operational costs, so it's manning the toll booths, it's maintenance, it's snow removal, a series of other operational costs. We expect that after those costs, for the first few years, net revenues will be modest. In fact, we expect them to be negative, as traffic ramps up. So negative to modest in the first few years. And what's been designed is an alignment of incentives so that when the splitting begins, all of the portions that go to the U.S. government will be reinvested in economic development, regional economic development in the area, the U.S. side of the area, obviously, which is pro-cyclical. It reinforces, more traffic, higher revenues, more investment, and that's the way it moves forward. The underlying agreement that we have with Michigan remains the same. And so no sharing of tolls until all the debt is repaid. So it's a good deal for both sides. It gets things moving, and that's in the spirit of today's announcement, which is to get things moving.
Are you able to provide more information about the deal? Some sources to us and to Bloomberg and Reuters are saying it's a 50% split, I guess, once the sharing starts happening. And if this is a Canadian project, why did you have to start giving? Why did you decide to start giving some of the revenue away?
The first thing is you quoted the overall amount of the capital investment of the project, around $6.5 billion. What we're talking about is very modest relative to the size of that. Okay, that's the first thing, just to give a sense. The second is that, as I'm going to repeat myself, but I think it's an important point, that it's aligned, the incentives are aligned here because the reinvestment in regional economic development on the Michigan side, mainly the Michigan side, that's obviously good for Michigan, but it's also good for Canada because it's going to reinforce the traffic. So we see the incentive alignment as a reasonable discussion. It's a good deal for Canada, good for the U.S., and it's great for both countries to have this bridge open, and we're looking forward to,
Is it 50%?
Thank you. Next question.
Mr. Prime Minister, Jerry Dewan from CTV News London. This region has among the highest unemployment levels of anywhere across the country. How are we looking to use this to address those concerns?
Yeah, well, my caucus colleagues from the region are here. We are very focused on exactly this issue. Part of the answer is in today's announcement. It's providing not just the scale of the investment, but also the certainty of a partnership. So longer term certainty, which of course is going to help GDLS invest and build out as well. And this is where some of the international travel that we've been doing, the international meetings we've had, the deepening of our partnership with NATO, our agreement, for example, with Europe to be part of their defense procurement, the work we're doing with Gulf allies. This is where it starts to come together because it reinforces the efforts of the company which has always been very successful in exports. About 80% of the production goes for export from here, but it's reinforcing that opportunity in this more dangerous world. So that's a component in the defense sector, the defense industrial sector. At the same time, we need to help build out the supply chain in this sector and other sectors. So, for example, Minister McGuinty, through Windsor, through here, has been meeting with, I'll give an example, this is one of many examples, but with tool and die makers in the region who can be suppliers more broadly as our industrial strategy moves forward. Of course, as well, we are working hard to get the right deal for Canada with the United States. We know they've changed their approach, but we're still negotiating with them on getting the right deal for that. And more broad diversification through reinvestment, through we have something called the Regional Tariff Response Fund, which is going directly back in here, where we're recycling the revenues from the tariffs into the region. So it needs to be comprehensive. We're very seized with the scale of the challenge. Last point I would just make, if I would say there's a common thread to what we're doing, is we're focusing on what we can control. You know, not waiting for decisions out of Washington, but moving forward with Canadian solutions with other export partners that help create those those good long-term jobs for the people of London and beyond.
Most of the challenges in this region stem from challenges in manufacturing sector specifically. Is there anything more broadly that you can do to help overall manufacturing issues?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've been doing, and it's starting to come into place, is we have changed the tax structure for investment in plant and equipment in manufacturing. In fact, not just plant and equipment, but basically all aspects of manufacturing. So we have now just passed through Parliament in recent months, the most attractive tax rate on new investment for manufacturing writ large. So that means plant and equipment, it means R&D, it means your ICT, your information technology components that come around. All of that is available for a super deduction, which is what it's called. But when you wrap that all together, it puts us in a position where the tax rate on investment in Canada is less than half the G7 average and 4 percentage points below the United States. So it now becomes very attractive. So we combine that with some of the other things we're doing and get the critical mass that way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next question.
Prime Minister Jonathan Juho from the London Free Press. I guess I just wanted to start by clarifying something. You mentioned 6,000 jobs for the next 8 years across Canada for the investment that you guys are making in this project. I'm curious, are these additional new 6,000 jobs, or, for example, are the employees hired by GDS counted in that number?
No, they're in that, but what we're getting is you get the certainty of those, the folks here get the certainty. Now, that certainty, I mean, I speak under the control of those who are actually running the business, but I can tell you from my experience in business is that certainty and the quality of the product and the relationships that we're building, Canada's building, the company has, but we're building internationally, provides the platform for the export expansion. And that's where you start to see the big increments. But the certainty cements those jobs, and then the nature of the supply chain, what they built out, gets that extra 10,000 across Canada.
Okay. So in that case, is there a way to get sort of like a breakdown of what actually will be new jobs that are going to be generated? Because talking to many sectors, you're talking about the spin-off effect and the benefit that investment like this would have on other manufacturing companies and all of that. But talking to them, they're finding it hard to sort of like even getting to be part of that supply chain. So it's not only like this investment expanding on its own right away, but I don't know if there are supports that they need to get into it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So the core of your question is something. Thank you for the question, because it gets to one of the key elements of a strategic partnership framework. Again, predictability, visibility of what the needs are going to be of the Canadian government, the Canadian Armed Forces, that can mean joint R&D, but also our ability through the Department of Industry, through the Department of National Defense, through RMPs and others, to work with companies that will be part of that supply chain. I referenced one of the things that the Minister of National Defense has been doing, which ministers of national defense wouldn't have done in the past. But one of the things he's been doing is sitting down with companies, bringing together core companies that will be either are or likely to be strategic partners, so-called primes, with an emphasis on them being Canadian, obviously, and putting them in the room with potential suppliers that perhaps had supplied other aspects of manufacturing, could have been part of the broader auto industry manufacturing chain. And that's part of what we're doing. Now, these are businesses. They make their decisions accordingly, but providing that predictability, the scale of this is very large, what we have to do to protect Canadians, protect our allies, and then making those connections, all of that is part of that flywheel that we're creating. So predictability, more business, better understanding, and then building out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, prochaine question.
Hi, Jessica Singer with CBC. Much of central Canada is dealing with wildfires and
Yes.
smoke pollution, as we feel very much here in London. This is just days after you announced plans for a new oil pipeline. What do you say to Canadians who believe these current climate conditions are a sign we should lean into our climate targets rather than drop some of them?
Well, first off, I absolutely agree. And it's not leaning, I'll use your phrase, leaning in, but the way the government views leaning in is actually putting the investment in the ground that's going to achieve those climate targets. We relied too much on targets, laws, that weren't driving the actual investment that's necessary to reduce emissions. So we've shifted our focus to get that investment driven. Core to that is the electricity strategy, which we're currently consulting on, doubling the scale of our grid over the course of the next couple of decades, a grid that's almost 85% clean power. The intention is to maintain that, do that in a way, and everybody in this room would be living through the challenges in affordability in various ways. So we need to do it in a way that is also preserves affordability for Canadians. We have amongst the lowest electricity costs in the world. We want to keep those. And so a climate strategy that looks to affordability in the short term and builds those emission reductions with major investments. And what you see is the investments or the major projects that we're helping to catalyze are low carbon. So that new oil pipeline, as a precondition of that new oil pipeline is the Pathways project, okay, which is the equivalent of removing 90% of the vehicles on Alberta roads. As another precondition is a 75% reduction in methane in Alberta. As another precondition is a carbon market that actually works, just isn't a carbon market in name. And I will underscore, and this is, if you want one illustration of the difference in our approach, is that theoretically, the carbon price is over $100 right now. But the carbon price in the actual markets has fell to about $20. So the gap between what was the objectives, what was said, what was legislated, and what was happening was enormous. And we're shifting the approach to make sure that there isn't a gap and the focus is in that investment. Last point, if I may, I'll hand back. Climate is a global issue, and that's why we have maintained our global climate finance. That's a rarity in the G7. We're the only countries, I think we are the only country who's maintained our level of global climate finance, because we need to obviously globally get emissions down outside of Canada.
Thank you. And what do you expect to accomplish when you sit down with premiers next week in Charlottetown? And will you address concerns from some provinces that Alberta is getting a better carbon price under their implementation agreement?
Thank you. That's one of the issues that we'll talk about, which is, and our objective, and is to have as national a carbon market as possible. Quebec has its own carbon market linked in with California, so I'm going to put Quebec aside for these purposes. But more broadly, the way we've structured the carbon market with Alberta, it does it will need some short-term adjustments for provinces. We've been clear about British Columbia, for example, some compensation there, given the difference in the price. But it actually creates an ability to have a much more effective carbon market that would benefit if more provinces were part. So we're not going to announce that or decide that in Charlottetown, but we're there. More broadly, we really want to reinforce progress being made on creating one Canadian economy. Canadians want one economy, and they want skilled workforce to be able to move around. They want goods and services to move around seamlessly across the country. We need to amp that up. There's progress that's been made. Federal government's done everything it can do directly. It needs to. And the last point, which goes to your first question, is the electricity strategy and making major progress on that. And some of the big levers in order to get that investment in place, the federal government will put on the table. Thank you.
Last question, dernière question.
Josiane Chaurac-Biamani, Radio-Canada. Monsieur Carney, qu'est-ce que ça vous fait de voir que le nord de l'Ontario brûle en ce moment, alors que le Canada s'éloigne de ses cibles climatiques sous l'action de votre gouvernement?
La dernière phrase, c'est quoi, pardon?
Je peux répéter la question.
Oui.
Monsieur Carney, qu'est-ce que ça vous fait de voir que le nord de l'Ontario brûle en ce moment, alors que le Canada s'éloigne de ses cibles climatiques sous l'action de votre gouvernement?
Oui, non, OK. Notre gouvernement a reçu les résultats de l'ancien gouvernement. Ça, c'est la vérité. Ce n'est pas le résultat des actions de notre gouvernement. Je viens d'arriver. OK, je viens d'arriver avec une situation où on a des cibles importantes, on a des règles et des lois et des conflits avec les provinces et pas d'assez d'investissement dans les réductions des gaz à effet de serre. OK, alors, nous sommes en train de changer totalement l'approche afin de mettre l'accent sur l'investissement afin de réduire des gaz à effet de serre. Par exemple, en ce qui concerne l'entente avec l'Alberta, on a le projet de Pathways, le plus grand projet de stockage de carbone du monde, équivalent de enlever 90% de tous les automobiles de l'Alberta. On a des réductions importantes, 75% de méthane en Alberta, c'est dans l'accord, et des améliorations de fonctionnement du marché du carbone en Alberta, et on espère à travers le Canada. Alors, on fait des grandes choses afin d'avoir d'investissement. Et point final, et je passe la parole à vous, mais c'est le dédoublement de l'énergie propre, de l'électricité propre à travers du Canada pendant les prochaines 2 décennies. Ça, c'est les grands investissements. C'est l'action, pas des prohibitions, qui est plus importante afin de réduire les gaz à effet de serre.
Parfait. Comment répondez-vous aux élus américains qui demandent au Canada d'en faire plus pour éviter que le nord des États-Unis reçoive chaque année la fumée des feux de forêt?
C'est la responsabilité. Il faut avoir une contribution des Américains dans la lutte contre le changement climatique. Et je donne un exemple. OK. Maintenant, nous mettons l'accent sur l'investissement sur l'énergie propre. Aux États-Unis, il y a des prohibitions maintenant contre l'énergie propre. Par exemple, l'énergie éolienne. C'est un exemple. Deuxièmement, le Canada maintient nos efforts à l'échelle mondiale. Et les États-Unis réduisent leurs efforts à l'échelle mondiale. Alors, oui, les changements climatiques, c'est la responsabilité de tout le monde, vraiment tout le monde, y compris les États-Unis. Ça, c'est la réponse. Merci.
Merci. Cela conclut notre conférence de presse. That ends our conference.
Good.